Hi guys, I am so mad at myself right now because I seriously just did all of these notes and I thought I was videoing and I totally didn't. So I'm gonna just kind of go over them without rewriting them and wasting another sheet of paper. If you do have any other questions though, please send me a message through Remind. You can go ahead and take a screenshot of this if this will help, and if you need this, I can screenshot it and send it to you as well, and maybe just take a picture and send it through Remind and put it on my Canvas on top of just having the notes. So we converted fraction decimals percents. You have a copy of this in your journal. If you took it home, great. If you didn't, that's fine. I have this here for you. So in order to divide or to convert a fraction to a decimal, we're going to convert by dividing the numerator by the denominator, and we're going to put the top number inside the house, which is our numerator, and the bottom number outside our house. So my example was 1/2. My numerator is on the top, so my numerator is 1. My denominator is on the bottom, so that is 2. And I divided my 1, which was inside the house, by 2. I can't divide 1 by 2, so I put a 0 there, added a decimal and brought it up, and a 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. Subtract 10, you got 0 down here, so my decimal is 0.5 or 5/10. And then to convert from a decimal to a percent, you multiply by 100. So I took my decimal that I used here and I just multiplied it by 100. So 5/10 times 100 gave me 500. I had 1 decimal place, so I need to put 1 decimal place in my answer, and that gave me 50%. If you go from decimal to percent, you're going to multiply. We're going to go backwards and go from percent to decimal. So we are going to divide this time by 100. So I took my same 50%. I'm going to divide that by 100. I can't divide 50 by 100, so I put a 0 there, added a decimal and brought it up, and then added a 0. So 100 goes into 500 5 times. 5 times 100 is 500. 500 minus 500 is 0, so I have my decimal. It actually ended up being the same decimal as it was there, which is good because these two, if I'm going to here, if I'm going to here, with the same exact fraction or decimal equivalent, it should be equivalent here. Then to go from a decimal to a fraction, you're going to write the fraction, or write the decimal as a fraction with the denominator equal to the place value. So like we said up here, your denominator is your number on the bottom. So we rewrote it with a fraction bar. Our 5/10 is in the tenths place, so our denominator is in the tenths place. So our number's in the tenths place, so the denominator is 10. We just take that number, bring it over here, and we have 5/10. We do need to simplify it, so 5 and 10 can both be divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So our new fraction is 1/2, which is actually the same thing we started with. If you go to the other side, I did have you guys write this down as well, as going from percent to fraction. So if you're trying to go, if they ask you to go from percent to fraction on a question, if we do that it's in a test or something, you can always skip the decimal, only if you're going from percent to fraction. So if you're going from percent to fraction, you can skip the decimal step and just put the percent over 100. So put your percent over 100, and then you have to simplify. So our percent earlier was 50%. I put that as a fraction and put it over 100. Those will both divide by 50. So 50 divided by 50 is 1. 100 divided by 50 is 2. That gave me 1/2, which is what I started with, and then the same thing I got down here. So we did a good job. We got it all right. They all equal each other. I also did the notes on Let's Make a Change, which is the practice that we did, and I'm so mad at myself, but I'm gonna at least do this work one more time for you. So you'll make sure, so if you do want to practice this, you have this to practice. This is not a grade. You do not have to turn this in. This is just for you to practice, and because I wanted you guys to practice the notes that we did today in class. So the first one was going from a fraction to a decimal. So we're going to go from a fraction to a decimal, and our fraction was 3/8. So we're going to divide 3 by 8. You can't divide 3 by 8, so there's a 0 there. Add a decimal and a 0, and then bring your decimal up. 8 goes into 30 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. You have 6 here, 0, bring that down. 8 goes into 67 times, minus 56 down here. You have 4, add a 0, bring it down. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. 8 goes into 45 times. 8 times 5 is 40, so we're going to end up with 0 here. So now we have our decimal. And that is exactly the same thing that I wrote as our answer when I did it the first time. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is go from fractions to percent. I didn't give you a little cheat sheet to go from fraction to percent, so we're going to have to first take one step at a time and go fraction to decimal, and then go fraction to, or decimal to percent. So the first thing we're going to do is to take our fraction, and our fraction is 7/8. And our 7/8 needs to be divided, the numerator by the denominator, so we can get our decimal. So we have 7 inside the house, 8 on the outside of the house. I can't divide 7 by 8, so let's put a 0, decimal and 0, and then bring my decimal up. 8 goes into 70, 8 times minus 64. 8 goes into 60, 7 times minus 56. 8 goes into 40, 5 times. And there's my decimal, but I'm not done. I still need to turn that decimal into a percent. And in order to change a decimal to a percent, I have to multiply by 100. So I'm going to take my decimal and I'm going to multiply it by 100. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 7 is 0. 0 times 8 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 7 is 0. 0 times 8 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 8 is 8. Let's add all that together. Lordy mercy, I keep moving. So I have 1, 2, 3 decimal places in my question or my problem up here. So my answer has to have 3 decimal places. So my percent is going to be 87 5/10%, or 87.5, which is exactly what I gave you right there. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is our decimals to fractions. My first decimal is 8/10. I have 8/10. Our notes say that to go from a decimal to a fraction, I write the fraction with the denominator equal to the place value. So I'm going to rewrite this as a fraction. So there's my fraction bar. My place value is in the tenths place. And then I just take that number and I put it there. So I have 8/10. I can simplify that. I can divide this by 2 and this by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my new fraction is 4/5. Sorry guys, I'm still kind of trying to remember how to do this whole video situation. So sometimes my stuff's over here on this side and sometimes it's over here. So please bear with me, and I'm sorry it's kind of all over the place. So anyhow, my decimal to fraction should have been 4/5, which is what I wrote. Next, going from decimal to percent, you're going to multiply by 100. So my percent, or I'm sorry, my decimal is decimal 0.3 or 300ths. So I'm going to multiply 100 times 0.03. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 1 is 3. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0, I'm sorry, 0 times 1 is 0. I'm going to add that together. I don't have to put that 0 there. I have 1, 2 decimal places, so I have to have 1, 2 decimal places. So your percent could either be 3.0%, or you can just write 3%. They mean the same thing. You can put either one. I'll take either one. So just like my answer, I have 3%. Second to last is percent to fraction. So just like I told you on the notes right back here, the percent to fraction, you're going to write it as a fraction and put the percent over 100 and then simplify. So my first one is 45%. 45% over 100. I can reduce that by 5. So divide that by 5, divide that by 5. 45 divided by 5 is 9. 100 divided by 5 is 20. There is my fraction, 9/20, which is what I got here. And the last thing is percent to decimals. We're gonna divide by 100. So my arrow percent to decimal, we're gonna divide by 100. And my percent is 9%. So 9 divided by 100. I cannot divide 9 by 100, so let's put a 0. Try to add a decimal and a 0 and see if that'll work. I cannot divide 90 by 0. I'm sorry, by 100, so I got to put a 0 there. Let's add another 0. 100 goes into 900 9 times. 9 times 100 is 900. And I end up with 9/100ths, which is what I got there. Okay, so there is an example of each one of these. So you have fraction to decimal, fraction to percent, decimal to fraction, decimal to percent. We have percent to fraction and percent to decimals here. So I gave you an example of each one of those. Please save this video if you have some questions about this, and we'll make sure that we get that those questions answered if you do have some questions about that. Okay, so on the homework, if your homework does say 4, 5, and 6, I'm sorry, it should say 1, 2, 3. If you have 4, 5, and 6, you're not missing any work. I promise there's only 3 questions on the homework. I did not lie to you. The first one, I just want to remind you that this one is going to need to be put into a mix. This mixed number needs to be put into an improper fraction. So if I have an improper fraction of 1.5, you're going to multiply these two numbers. So 2 times 1. Then you're going to take that number. 2 times 1 is 2. And you're going to take 2 and you're going to add 1. And that's going to be my new numerator. So 2 plus 1 is 3. Then I'm going to keep the same denominator. So this is the same thing as this. So that's going to be the new fraction that I turn into a decimal. So 3/2 is going to be the fraction that you need to turn into a decimal and then turn into a percent. If I do have a number, a whole number in front of a fraction, that means I'm probably going to have more than 100%. So if I had a cell phone, that cell phone has full battery, I have 100%, right? If I have my second phone, like let's say I have a work phone. So this is my home phone. Then I have a work phone, and that one has 35%. If I add those together, both of my total percents of my battery is 135%. So that's not the greatest example, but that is just to show you that you can have more than 100%. So there is more than just one whole of something. So that's number 1. So that's just a little hint on number 1 that you are going to have more than 100% on that one most likely. The second one, number 2, they're asking you just to double check and see if I convert 75/100ths to a fraction, is that what it should look like? B is if I change 8/10ths to a percent, is that what it will be? If I have 4/10ths and I convert that, is that what it look like? If I have 3/100ths and I change that to a percent, is that what this will look like? So you need to find just one, A, B, C, or D, that is equivalent, that has both are equivalent to each other. The last one is number 3. It says, which of the following is not equivalent to 45/100ths? Keyword there is not. So if you do change 45/100ths to a fraction and you see that there, mark it off. If you change 45/100ths to a percent and you see it here, mark it off. If you change it to a fraction and it hasn't been completely reduced, or so if I change 45/100ths to a fraction and then it can be reduced by 2, here's my example, and it can be reduced by 2, and this reduced or simplified fraction is here, that's not going to be the answer. You need to find the one that is not here. Okay? So which one is not equivalent to 45/100ths? Once again, if you do have questions about this, please send me a message through Remind. Send me an email. My email is on my staff webpage at redoakmiddleschool.com or org maybe. I am always here, guys, until about 8 o'clock. So please let me know if you have any questions or if there's something that is just super, super confusing. And I will try my best to help you guys out. I want you guys to succeed, so I want you to do the best that you can. This is due tomorrow. I will send the link to the website on Canvas, and I will put this on Remind. So have a great day. I love you guys, and please let me know if you have any questions. Bye.